Las palabras del cuerpo, especial de la Feria Internacional del Libro de Bogotá 2025.
Bueno, en este cubrimiento de la Feria Internacional del Libro de Bogotá estoy muy feliz de estar acompañada por una escritora que, además de escribir muy bien, creo que los temas que trata conmueven y le llegan a muchas mujeres y a muchas personas que se han visto al margen de la literatura, al margen de los eventos artísticos, y es Virgie Tovar. Virgie, welcome to the HJCK.
Thank you.
Virgie, yo quiero comenzar hablando de este libro que tengo yo aquí en mis manos, Tenés derecho a permanecer gorda, un ensayo poético, diría yo, y quiero empezar sobre qué motivó la escritura de este libro.
Yeah, I have always been the biggest person. I come from a family of bigger people, and I found myself as a child, that wasn't a problem because my mother and my grandmother and my grandfather, we all had the same body, and I didn't learn shame from them. You know, I ate what I wanted and I did what I wanted, and I loved my body. And when I was introduced to school at around 4 or 5, I started to learn that something was wrong with my body according to the world outside of my home. And I started to learn that the name for my body is fat, and that fat is really bad.
Yes.
And that I should do everything in my power not to be fat, and specifically that I should eat very, 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 very little. And that was, I mean, you know, I'm 4 or 5 years old. This is a very shocking experience to go from having no shame to learning shame. And it took years to really accept that that in the eyes of my culture, that something was really wrong with me. And it really hurt me, and it really changed my life. You know, it changed how I thought about myself, how I interacted with people, how I dressed. You know, for years and years and years, I only wore black and navy, like dark blue, and covered up, and just that sense that something was really wrong with me. And of course, my relationship to food got worse and worse and worse. And as a naturally bigger person, no matter how little I ate, I was never small enough. And so, of course, when in that situation, I ended up developing anorexia, which no one diagnosed because I wasn't the idea of what an anorexic is supposed to look like. And in the United States, anorexics tend to be white, and they tend to be very, very small. And that's not true, but that's the doctor's idea of what an anorexic is. So there was no way that I was going to get diagnosed with that. So I lived with this really horrible illness with no help, and just thinking that I was doing this for my health. And it really, again, it took so much from me. And then eventually I ended up learning about something called fat activism, learning ideas that there's nothing wrong with being in a bigger body, and that I should not have to be anorexic, and that I am equal to other people. And these were really revolutionary ideas that took years and years and years for me to find. This wasn't until my 20s and my 30s. And when I discovered this, I felt a lot of anger about what had happened. And I also knew, for example, in the United States, most women are in big bodies. Most women are plus size. 70% of women are fat. And so I had this sense that I couldn't believe that 70% of women probably went through a lot of what I went through. And then, of course, the remaining 30% live in fear of becoming fat and experiencing what I did. And I really wanted to write a book that confronted this. And I wanted to write a book that said there's really nothing wrong with being fat, and that we need to change the culture, not our bodies.
Eso me parece muy importante porque Yo siento que el cuerpo es el primer territorio que uno habita y el territorio que va a habitar siempre. Y cuando a ti te dicen ese cuerpo está mal, no es posible salir de él, no es posible dejar de ser quien soy. Entonces uno casi que se sale de sí misma todo el tiempo.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. And I think it's so unethical to tell someone that their body, which is, you're right, it's the vessel that they take through their whole lives. To tell someone that there's something wrong with that is so immoral. It's so wrong, and it destroys the spirit. You know, in the book, You Have the Right to Remain Fat, I open the book by saying, my body used to belong to me.
Exacto.
And I think that there's this sense of it was mine, and then at some point the culture took it from me. And it wasn't mine anymore. It was an enemy that I had to control and punish, you know?
Total. ¿Qué sentiste cuando lo terminaste? Porque también fue como mirarse al espejo y decir, yo tengo derecho a habitar este cuerpo, y al mismo tiempo el mundo me dice que no, como vivir en dos realidades al mismo tiempo.
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, as someone who is Mexican and also American, I already understand how to have dual consciousness or have one identity and also another identity. I think that feels, even though it's painful,
Yes.
It felt very natural to me. And I think I had to have this moment, I guess you might call it maturity, or I don't know what word you would use, but I had to have a moment where I had to accept that in the choice to choose me or choose society, I will choose me. And whether that is fatness or aging or my decision not to be a mother or anything, that at the end of the day, I'm going to choose me and deal with whatever society has to say about it.
Y yo creo que esa decisión es la que hace además que salga este libro, elegirse a sí misma, porque muchas veces yo creo que un gran problema de las mujeres que tenemos es podemos crear cosas, pero decidimos guardarlas por el miedo, ¿no? Porque nos han dicho, eres demasiado gorda, demasiado alta, demasiado baja. Yo, por ejemplo, soy diabética y cuando me hospitalizaron por mi enfermedad, lo primero que me dijeron era que era mi culpa, instauraron la culpa en mí. Y yo creo que este es uno de los temas que más me gusta del libro, y es, hay muchas formas de culpa sobre los cuerpos, y una de ellas es, por ejemplo, la batalla y la guerra de las dietas, y quiero que hablemos de eso, de la cultura de la dieta, que es una parte fundamental del libro. Virgie, ¿cómo viste tú eso? Además, lo que contaste de la anorexia, que es pues rotundo, la cultura de la dieta es casi que una imposición política.
Yeah, and I want to say that, 1 out of every 4 people who start on a diet will develop an eating disorder.
Yes.
And eating disorders are very serious diseases. They're very deadly diseases. In the United States, they're the number 2 most deadly diseases. And I think, it's important for me to tell people, our doctor or our family or the culture decides that it is better for you to be thin than for you to have good mental health, for example.
Of course.
And for me, I think, what right do you have to tell me to go on a diet? It's almost like trading one societal problem for a personal problem, where it's like society has a problem with being fat, and so they decide, okay, it's okay that you might develop a deadly mental illness because it's better that you develop that than you be fat, which is just, again, so immoral. Who gets to make that judgment for another person? I want to say that it's very common, and I think it's not just the United States, it's very common for children who are 4, 5, or 6 to be prescribed or put on a diet. And when you put someone on a diet, this is the thing, people don't realize this, when you put someone on a diet, you relegate them to an experience that people shouldn't have. Even though our culture, for example, believes that dieting is healthy, what's happening inside of our bodies is that our bodies experience that as a threat to our survival.
Yes.
It experiences it as starvation.
Yes.
And so what happens is it goes into fight or flight mode, which is very, very stressful. This is like the adrenaline mode that that human beings, it's very bad to be in that mode. So you start out by putting a child in that adrenaline stress mode, and then you keep them there for years and years and years and years, and you tell them everything that's going wrong with them is because they're not dieting enough, when in actuality it's often the food restriction that's leading to all of these issues. And I will say, for me, for years and years and years of dieting and then developing anorexia, I was so sick all the time. I was anxious. I had a very, very low immune system. And whatever happened, I just thought, oh, it's because I'm not thin enough. And it becomes like a psychological cycle where no matter what, you believe it's because I'm too fat. You never think, maybe I'm not having enough food. Maybe I don't have enough calories to keep my immune system from working. And we know with diets, common side effects are, you can't think very well, you're more tired all the time, your immune system is worse, you lose your hair, you lose muscle. These things are very bad for people. And yet, again, the whole idea is, but nothing is as bad as being fat.
Total. Y siento que, como decías, lo ponen a uno como a vivir entre la vida y la muerte, casi al filo de la muerte. Pero es preferible que estés en riesgo todo el tiempo a que habites un cuerpo que no le sirve al sistema.
Yes.
Y hay otra cosa, Virgie, que me gusta del libro, que también es muy honesto sobre el deseo, ¿no? Y creo que uno, cuando habita cuerpos como disidentes, digámoslo así, viven una vida como de la suposición. Cuando yo sea flaca, puedo ponerme esta ropa. Cuando yo sea flaca, puedo ir a tal lugar. No vive la vida, sino que se imagina la vida. Y este libro es una invitación a confrontar el deseo, ¿no?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's to stop putting conditions on your desire.
Yes.
Like, you can wear the bathing suit today, you can dance today, you can wear the short skirt today, or your shorts, or the bikini, and let society think what it's going to think. Don't let it stop you. And I think the other thing that's important is, I often tell women, it's not just that society shames women for being fat. They shame women for all kinds of things, like you were saying, for being too tall or too short, or your hair is not right, or your skin isn't right, or your nose isn't right. So I think to wait until society says, okay, you have the perfect body to do that, that day isn't coming.
No.
So it goes back to, again, it's almost like when you think about the connection of diet culture and misogyny or patriarchy, it's like we're waiting for a man or our father to give us permission to exist.
Total.
And we need to just stop looking for that permission. Stop looking out and look in,
Total, y creo que también es pues como una esquizofrenia, porque uno está habitando los dos mundos, como lo hablábamos ahorita, pero siempre hay una sensación de no alcanzar, como no llego. Y yo lo he hablado con mis estudiantes, yo soy profesora y mi cátedra se llama Literatura y Enfermedad. Y yo les decía, el cuerpo perfecto no existe, es imposible el cuerpo perfecto. Incluso para las personas y las mujeres que vemos en redes sociales, ese cuerpo no existe, porque o han tenido que someterse a dietas, a cirugías, casi que a llevar su cuerpo al límite para igual no tenerlo. Entonces el cuerpo perfecto es una imposición que ilusionada, o sea, no existe ese cuerpo, ¿cierto?
Yeah, and I mean, even if you have, quote unquote, the perfect ideal body right now, you will not have it in 10 years or 15
Exactly.
years, right? So I think, to your point, even if you hit some ideal somehow, it's always brief. And I think this is the trap when, again, looking outward for approval, this keeps us in a state of being stuck. It keeps us in a state of being children, which is what patriarchy wants, because it's very, very intimidating for a woman to claim her own body.
Y además hacer que las mujeres se sientan juntas, tranquilas, no en esa competencia en la que supuestamente deberíamos estar. Y una amiga mía siempre me dice eso, como no hay nada más problemático para el sistema que las mujeres se quieran entre ellas. Y cuando yo leía el libro, se lo pasé a mi amiga y le dije, es como si Virgie nos estuviera hablando, ¿no? Y eso es muy lindo, porque es como sentirse en compañía en un tema que durante muchos años nos sentimos muy solas.
Yeah, I mean, that makes me happy to hear. I think it is one of, for example, for years and years and years, I was a feminist who was dieting. Even within feminism,
claro.
There's fat phobia. And I think that it's almost like a taboo within this very critical understanding of women's bodies that we still can't be fat. And to your point, like I think I've been thinking about this a lot, how throughout history, we see that if you're not a white, rich man, you ultimately your body will be medically pathologized.
Yes.
And we see the history of women's bodies being pathologized through hysteria.
Yes.
We see the history of, for example, the invention of like homosexuality through psychiatry, which is pathologizing otherness. I think it's important when people one of the things that scares people about this conversation is, what about health? And I think it's important to understand that throughout history, that medicine has been used to weaponize anyone who is not a white, rich man.
And straight.
Yes, exactly. So, to understand that we're unfortunately caught in a history that has been going on for many, many, many years, but to just remember that health isn't something so holy and almost like from heaven,
yes,
that it's made by people, and that unfortunately it's often in conversation with cultural oppression.
En este momento estamos viendo además la cultura de la dieta y al mismo tiempo medicamentos como el Ozempic que casi que te dicen al oído, no necesitas esfuerzo, métete, no importa lo que esto te haga a futuro.
Yes.
Entonces es como el cuerpo, además es un cuerpo imposible, el perfecto entre comillas, y al mismo tiempo es un cuerpo al que no le importa el futuro. Porque
yes,
vives en el ahora, la foto que se vea bien ahora, no importa si en 10 años estamos enfermos, no importa si se nos cae el pelo en 3 días, es el ahora. Y yo creo que esto de el derecho de habitar nuestros cuerpos, cualquiera que sea, habla también como de una permanencia en el tiempo de la vida.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think, when I think about Ozempic or, GLP-1, semaglutide, it scares me, because it's like society is celebrating the starvation of women. And diet culture has always been about celebrating the starvation of women, but this is to another level. I mean, to the point that, talking to women who have taken it, where food disgusts them, that they can't eat it, maybe they want it or they don't want it, but that when it's in their mouth that it tastes terrible. I mean, there's something, to me, that's cruel and unusual. That is, in my opinion, that's torture. And it scares me when I'm feeling that sense of something is very wrong and the culture is saying, yay, keep going, more. And I think, to go back to politics, I think, what better way to silence women and
yes,
to keep women in competition,
yes,
and to almost, I mean, honestly, when you have that relationship to food, it affects everything. Like, I was reading an article the other day that talked about how a lot of times the Ozempic will completely get rid of sexual desire.
yes.
And I'm like, it's like a living robot. It's almost like a zombie.
Yes,
and
of course.
And I'm just like, this is like medicalized zombieism for women, and everyone around me is like, this is the best thing ever, and it solves everything, and it's just so confusing. The other thing about it, that's weird is, it's an injection.
Yes.
And I think one of the things that people are so afraid of about being fat, of course, is like one of the things everybody talks about all the time is diabetes, right?
Yes.
And the whole reason why diabetes is scary is because you have to get injections.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, okay, and the other thing is, right, like a lot of people are scared of diabetes because they might like lose their sight, right? And GLP-1s have been linked to eye necrosis, like your eye dying. And so for me, I find there's almost like a creepy poetry to all of it where I'm like, so we're really afraid of this unless it makes us thin. In that case, I'm happy for my eye to die. I'm happy to inject myself. I'm happy to lose my hair. Like, you know what I mean? And it just speaks to the hypocrisy of the notion of health.
Es como un discurso de la muerte a costa de un cuerpo que sostenga ese discurso. Virgie, para terminar, yo quisiera que pues les dijeras a las mujeres y a las personas que escuchan y que nos están escuchando en este momento por qué deben tener el derecho de habitar su propio cuerpo, y también qué ha sido para ti todo este proceso de aceptar tú misma tu forma de ver el mundo, tu forma de entenderte a ti misma, hacerles una invitación a que sean ellos mismos los que decidan el cuerpo en el que habitan.
I mean, there's so much to say here. Like, on the one hand, you don't owe anybody, no matter what society says, you don't owe anybody your body, a certain type of body, a certain type of health. That is yours. And no matter what society says, it's just not true. Like, our bodies are ours. And I think the other thing that I think about is, for me, I'm at my best place, like mentally, physically, relationally, in the body that I have now. And I lived for so long with so much fear of this body that I have now, which is a fat body. And I want to say also, like, body diversity is real. Like, I look like my ancestors. Most of us look like our ancestors, and we shouldn't be striving for a world where every single person looks the same. In the same way that if we went into nature and asked that every single tree be the same, every plant that's not an interesting world, and it's a world that is harmful, right?
Yes.
We understand that without that diversity, we threaten the natural world.
It's like an Instagram face, Instagram body.
Yes. So I just want to say, like, you have the right to exist in the body that you have, and you have the right to do it without apology.
Wow. Thank you so much, Virgie, for this interview and for writing this book. This book is wonderful, it's beautiful, and yo sé que muchas mujeres lo valoran, porque conozco muchas mujeres a las que se los he prestado y lo han leído. And thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you.
Este espacio hace parte de Las Palabras del Cuerpo, especial de la Feria Internacional del Libro de Bogotá 2025 en la HJCK, El Arte de Escuchar.